First of all, I wanted to give credit for that film that you watched while you were waiting for the webinar to begin. It was filmed and produced by Annie Crawley, who is the photographer on Plastic Ahoy. And I think she spends more time under the water than she does on top of it, but she has the most amazing images and video. And I agree with Allie, it is calming. But I mentioned I love talking about the ocean, but I really love talking about ocean plastic. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I do. And I particularly love talking about what we can do about it. So if you would bear with me, what I'd like to do is talk for a little bit and then read some excerpts to you from Plastic Ahoy, because it's too long to read the entire book to you. And then I'd like to talk to you about some ways that you can be the hope for the ocean. So first, we protect what we love. And I absolutely love the ocean, and I hope you do too. And some of the reasons that I love it are, of course, recreation, snorkeling, boogie boarding. I love to sit on the beach and listen to the sound of the waves, reading a good book or closing my eyes. I love the smell of the salt air. I live in Sacramento, California, so it gets pretty darn hot here. And I like to escape to the ocean to feel that cool breeze on my face occasionally. And I love the sand between my toes. I also like walking on the hard-packed sand right as the water is washing in and out of, off and onto the beach. And I love the feeling of the water running over my feet. So I know these are things that the ocean gives me, but that's part of why we love the ocean, because it gives us so much. The ocean also gives us food. Where would we be without seafood? Sushi, swordfish, salmon, halibut, tilapia, shrimp, lobster, you name it, we've probably eaten it. The ocean is also a fabulous place for diversity of life, maybe second only to the rainforest. The life in the ocean is beautiful, it's magnificent, and it's also weird. The fierceness of the great white shark never ceases to amaze me. The playfulness of sea lions or dolphins, I could watch them forever. The perseverance of coral reefs as each polyp piles itself on top of the next and it slowly builds a reef that teems with life. Or the sheer ugliness of the frogfish. If you've never seen one, Google it. It is really ugly. Scientists believe that life began on our planet in the ocean before evolving to land. The ocean contains 97% of the water on our planet. It's responsible for our weather patterns. And, get this one, it produces oxygen for 2 out of every 3 breaths you take. Even if you live inland, the ocean is producing your oxygen. So basically, without the ocean, there would be no us. We are connected to the ocean in every single sense. Everything we do affects the ocean, from littering to driving our cars. All of those things affect the ocean. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how in just a minute. So you might wonder, why in the world are we trashing it? Well, I've been wondering that too, and before I wrote Plastic Ahoy, I was only vaguely aware of the plastic problem in the ocean. But then I read an article in my local newspaper about a group of scientists going to the North Pacific Central Gyre to actually study the plastic. And they call themselves the SEAPLEX expedition. SEAPLEX stands for Scripps Environmental Accumulation of Plastics Expedition. And this whole idea of this group of scientists going into the middle of the ocean really captivated me. It seemed like a perfect way for me to try to make a difference, because it didn't seem enough to just recycle anymore. And I was right. I followed their story. I read their blog while they were at sea, And they were living a mystery. They were a group of young scientists, graduate students at the time, who wanted to explore this problem. And basically, what they were giving me, they were handing me a call to action. So that's why I wrote Plastic Ahoy. It's aged for middle grade readers, which means about 4th grade through 8th grade. But I've had younger kids tell me that they've read it with their parents. I've had high school kids and high school teachers and college students tell me that they've read it as the beginning to a much more in-depth unit. So the thing I like about Plastic Ahoy is that it can be used with a variety of audiences. So what I'd like to do is read you a little bit from Plastic Ahoy. And we start with the first chapter, Permission to Come Aboard, Captain. Miriam Goldstein, Chelsea Rockman, and Darcy Taniguchi were going to sea. A mystery awaited them in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Several tons of plastic, floated in the water. The plastic had drifted there from around the world. It killed birds and marine life that ate it. Miriam, Chelsea, and Darcy studied the ocean in graduate school. They knew only a little about the ocean dump. They were more worried about what they didn't know. Scientists thought that large amounts of plastic in the water might affect the way that ocean life grows and develops. Eventually, it might even harm the wider ocean, Earth's oxygen supply, and people, the ones who made the mess in the first place. But they didn't know for sure. No one had studied the floating plastic before. They were the first. Miriam, Chelsea, and Darcy decided to be the first. For the 3 weeks, they would live and work on a small research ship, and you can see that on the slide. It's called the New Horizon. They charted a course to sail more than 1,000 miles west into open water. Despite ocean swells and cramped living quarters, they would work 12-hour shifts observing and collecting ocean plastic. They planned to study their samples and experiment to learn more. They hoped to begin solving the mystery of how plastic affected ocean life. After weeks and weeks of preparation, the student scientists waved goodbye to their families from the deck of New Horizon. It shoved off from the pier in San Diego, California. They couldn't help wondering what they would find. And this is part of the second chapter called Garbage, Here We Come. Miriam and the other Seaplex scientists wanted to answer some important questions with their research. How much plastic was in the garbage patch? Were fish eating it? And if so, were they dying because of it? Were the chemicals used to make plastic poisoning the water? Did the plastic affect the food chain? And were any of the animals and plants living on the floating plastic? Team Seaplex hoped to find the answers, but they also knew that their answers would raise more questions. As New Horizons sailed farther from land, the trash detectives kept their eyes peeled. We are hoping to see whales, birds, and maybe even some plastic, Chelsea wrote on the Seaplex blog. Sounds sad to hope for trash, but if we don't find any, we can't address any of our questions. Garbage, here we come. This is part of Chapter 3 called Braving the Gyre. Within a day of leaving San Diego, blue sky merged with blue water all around. Fish fed, birds soared, land was only a memory. Miriam and her team sailed toward the North Pacific Central Gyre, where the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is located. The gyre is an area of the ocean 3 times bigger than the United States, not including Alaska and Hawaii, and there's a picture of the gyre in front of you. 4 ocean currents form the boundaries of the gyre. Compared to the currents surrounding it, water inside the gyre is relatively calm. Miriam called the gyre a liquid desert. On the surface, it appears almost lifeless. Upon closer inspection, several kinds of animals call it home. And these are some of the tools that the scientists used to gather their samples. The plastic in the gyre, several tons of it as I mentioned, also floats near the surface. Wind, tides, and smaller ocean currents carry debris from shore, where we leave it. Larger currents catch the plastic and carry it to the gyre. The plastic rarely escapes because the currents that circle the gyre, it's hard to get out. Many people picture the garbage patch as an enormous floating island. The reality is different. It doesn't look like a mass of garbage from the air. It's hardly visible from the deck of a ship. Many of the plastic pieces started out as water bottles, milk jugs, pool toys, action figures, Legos, or even toothbrushes. Most have broken down into pieces no bigger than a kernel of unpopped corn. After 5 days at sea, pieces of plastic began to float by the ship. 2 scientists on the top deck, which is only about 30 feet above the water, counted 100 pieces during the day shift. The closer the trash detectives sailed to the gyre, the more plastic they saw. So this is a little bit from Miriam's chapter. Each of the 3 scientists has their own chapter, and Miriam studied the rafting community, so I called it Miriam's Hitchhikers. And I'll introduce you to what she did. Miriam loved poking around tide pools as a kid. In 9th grade, she discovered she could have a career as an ocean scientist. I had no idea that people could learn about weird, slimy marine creatures for a living. I've been hooked ever since, she says. On board New Horizon, Miriam studied how plastic affects the rafting community, those tiny, tiny organisms that hitch rides on plastic pieces. Did fish lay eggs on the plastic? Did barnacles live on the floating plastic? And did organisms travel to different parts of the ocean where they didn't necessarily belong? Miriam hoped the sample she gathered would provide answers. The ocean forms a web of interconnected communities. If the presence of plastic changed one community, it could affect the entire ecosystem. Miriam realized the millions of pieces of plastic pollution were like empty homes, tempting the rafting community to move in. As a result, the desert-like gyre seemed to have become a major metropolis of rafters. She worried about what all this new life could mean to the desert-like gyre. Let me get to my last page here. The Seaplex trash detectives found plastic in 130 of their 132 net tows. So plastic in every net tow but 2. And they towed nets over 1,700 miles. That's the same distance as between New York City and Denver, Colorado. To see plastic debris in the middle of this large stretch of ocean, far from home, Chelsea said, offers a wake-up call for the way we leave our footprint on remote places of the earth. Plastic debris floats in each of the 5 large gyres around the globe. And as you can see, if a beach is in the middle of one of these gyres, it also washes up onto the beaches. Unfortunately, scientists can't solve the plastic problem through research alone. They need help from kids and adults everywhere. Plastic is a permanent material used in disposable products, and it's accumulating in all 5 major gyres around the world. So what can we do about it? First, people need to change their habits. No more single-use convenience plastic. We don't need it, Chelsea says. The ocean provides the air we breathe, the food we eat, a place to play and a place to admire nature. Yet plastic floats in ocean waters around the world. The ocean is the cradle of life on Earth, Miriam said. Plastic pollution may threaten our greatest resource. Seaplex research shows that the floating plastic is already a problem. Scientists are just beginning to understand how many ways it might be affecting Earth's vast ocean. Taking action right away may keep the Great Pacific Garbage Patch from growing. and having even a greater effect on our ocean. People want to know that there are wildernesses out there, Miriam said. If even the open sea is no longer a wilderness, what is? So that's a little taste of Plastic Ahoy. I hope you enjoyed it. But what I'd like to talk to you about now is my takeaway from all of the research I did to write Plastic Ahoy. I don't think that there's any doubt that there's definitely a problem. In fact, a recent study came out that said there are over 5.25 trillion, this is what it looks like written out, 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic in the ocean. I mean, that's an astronomical number. It would take you years just to count that high. So how do we imagine that? And the best example I heard was from a scientist that worked on this study. She said, fill plastic bags with plastic bags like these, plastic garbage bags. Fill them with plastic and tie them off, and then set them next to each other, one right next to the other, along the coastline. And by the time you fill up enough bags to cover every single inch of coastline around the world, that will be about 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic. Now, the number doesn't mean much to me, but that visual of all these plastic bags lined up along our coastlines, that is a powerful visual to me. So what I'd like to do is talk about how we can be the hope. We're the problem, yes, but people don't like to be scolded. I don't like to be scolded, and I'm not here to scold you. I want to talk to you about how we can be part of the solution, how we can be the hope, be the voice for our ocean. So the first thing we can address is water bottles. You've probably heard this before. People drink water out of water bottles every single day. In fact, we use 2 million of these guys every 5 minutes. And in the United States alone, that's about 1.5 million barrels of oil used to make plastic water bottles every year. So what are our alternatives? Well, you can use a reusable plastic bottle like this, but again, this is plastic. It takes oil to make it. So another alternative might be boxed water. I found this in Los Angeles when I was at a conference, and I just thought it was brilliant. So maybe next time you do a festival at school, or an art festival, or a circus or something like that, rather than selling bottled water, you can sell boxed water. Another idea is to fill up large urns of water and then ask everybody to bring their own aluminum water bottles and ask them to refill them. So you're not responsible for actually providing water bottles. People are responsible for providing the bottle themselves, and you just provide the water. So those are a few alternatives. Another problem that we have are these plastic bags, which I've already showed you. A lot of places are beginning to ban plastic bags, which personally I think is a great idea. We use 240,000 plastic bags in the world every 10 seconds. That's about 100 billion each year in the United States, to the tune of 12 million barrels of oil. So what are our alternatives? Well, I usually bring canvas bags when I go grocery shopping. If I go to the mall, I bring my little Chico bag here, because it folds up really nice in my purse, and I can unfold it and put in everything I buy at the mall. If I'm grocery shopping, sometimes my fruit comes in these teeny weeny paper bags, which is a great idea. I don't have to use the plastic produce bags. But I've also purchased these net drawstring bags for my produce, fruits and vegetables. So again, I don't have to use plastic when I go to the grocery store. This is my pet peeve right here, straws. We use 500 million straws every single day in the United States. That would fill about 125 school buses each day, or 46,400 school buses every year. That's an astronomical number. And when you think about it, none of them are recycled, not one. When you go into a restaurant, you've probably been there before, you ask for a drink and they automatically put a straw in it. So what I would like you to consider doing is when you order a drink at a restaurant, ask your waiter, no straw, please, and say why you don't want a straw. Say that you're trying to protect the ocean, 500 million straws are used every day in the US, you're trying to not add to that number. None of those straws are recycled. Another thing you can do in your family or in your classroom is maybe start a Skip the Straw campaign. Talk to the restaurants in your area and ask them to stop serving straws, especially stop serving straws automatically. It's called auto-strawing. So be one of those people that informs others what's happening with all of these straws. If you like to bring a juice box to school, maybe consider putting a drink in a reusable bottle, because those juice boxes all have straws, and I bet they're not being recycled. If you're recycling them, good for you. I love that. Another problem is microbeads. Maybe you have facial cleansers or toothpastes or shampoos or cleaning products or something like that with little microbeads in them. These microbeads, I'm not sure if you can see it. You can see those pink and blue beads floating in there. Those are all plastic. This is in cosmetics. Those plastics are made from polyethylene or polypropylene. You can see on the slide there that the ingredients are circled. Polyethylene, microbeads, those are your key words. What you could purchase instead is something with apricot shells or cocoa beads if you want the same sort of scrubbing activity on your face. Another way to figure out if you're buying products with microbeads in them is to download the app on your telephone. Beat the Microbead app. It was, I think, made by Five Gyres, which supplied these pictures here, and which has been instrumental in talking to legislators about developing bills that ban microbeads in our products. The problem with microbeads is that they're so tiny. They slip right through the filters in our sewage treatment plants. So something that slips through the filter goes right to our waterways, our streams, our rivers, and our lakes, which eventually goes to the ocean. Airline cups are another pet peeve of mine. If you're on a long flight, they give you several of these, don't they? Right. We use 9 billion with a B, cups every year on airplanes, and none of them are recycled. They recycle bottles and they recycle cans, but they don't recycle their plastic cups. So again, I come back to this all-purpose water bottle. Maybe for traveling, you might want to get a smaller one that's not so large to carry. But this is what I bring on an airplane, and I ask the flight attendants to fill this up rather than giving me one of these. Coffee cups are another problem. We throw away 14 billion of these guys every day. Now, this particular one isn't made of plastic, but the top that goes on it is made of plastic, isn't it? So if we were to stop using coffee cups and maybe bring our own cup, like this one has a silicone top and it's a ceramic cup. It fits in the cup holder in my car. It's just as easy to carry. And the coffee companies don't mind filling it up. So this is another alternative, instead of throwing away 14 billion cups every year. Now, there are lots of other ways that we can save too. For instance, consider composting fruits and vegetables, eggshells, things like that, because if you compost them, you get this wonderful rich soil for your gardens, and you use fewer plastic bags to handle all that stuff that you would normally throw away. Another thing I like to do is use powdered laundry detergent, which comes in a box, as opposed to liquid laundry detergent, which comes in a plastic jug. But if you absolutely have to have liquid laundry detergent, here's one that comes in a cardboard box. Another way to save in plastic is, instead of purchasing soap in a plastic jug, purchase it in a cardboard box. This is recyclable. Once I use the soap, it's gone. I'd have no plastic waste whatsoever. I thought of another way to save just the other day when I was at the grocery store. I needed to buy some barbecue sauce. We were barbecuing chicken on our grill. And I looked at all of the different varieties available, and I noticed that some of the varieties come in glass jars. So instead of buying another plastic jar, I bought the glass one. This is a powerful tool that we have, because when we go to the stores, when we make choices as consumers, we can then give manufacturers hints as to what's important to us. So what I'd like you to do is consider the reduce, reuse, recycle mantra that we've had for quite a while. If you are reducing, reusing, and recycling, I applaud you. Thank you very much. That is great. But now, with over 7 billion people on the planet, unfortunately, it's not enough. So I'd like you to consider adding refuse to that list. Refuse single-use plastic whenever you possibly can. Buy glass. Bring your own. Just try to think of another alternative. I gave you several ideas, but I'm sure you can think of lots of other ways that you can refuse single-use plastic. And the last thing is, we need to actually rethink. Rethink our purchases. What are we saying by what we purchase? Always with the mind to save the ocean. So please, please be the voice of the ocean. Reduce your single-use plastic consumption and be the hope. Thanks so much. I can take questions now if you'd like. Looks like I've got a bunch here.
Images of the garbage patch, and just hearing a little bit, because it is something that so few people are going to have the actual experience to visit within their lifetime. I think bringing it to the forefront, few people are going to have the actual experience to visit within their lifetime. I think bringing it to the forefront is really, really important. And so your book is something that I recommend that everyone should check out and read, and learn a little bit about the garbage patch. Let's see here. We had some issues with the audio and stuff here, but we had a lot of questions about. I think one question that I know came in over Twitter for us was about really helping to make that impact. And we always get questions about how we can clean up the plastic that's already in the water. And is that possible?
Well, there's actually one person who's working on that. His name is Boyan Slat, and he's developed a kind of a device that will use the ocean's wave action to clean itself up. He developed this idea when he was 17, believe it or not, and he found funding, and he's been in various phases of testing. So I've been watching him pretty closely. Basically, his device has two kind of V-shaped booms that are stretched out over an area of the ocean, and the device is anchored to the sea floor. And again, he uses the ocean's wave action to clean up the garbage patch. He expects, though, that it'll take close to, I think he said 20 years maybe, to clean it all up, and that's just one gyre. So it is a problem. It's a problem that really doesn't have a great solution for a number of reasons. Funding is one of them. Whose problem is it? Who put the trash there? Who's going to clean it up? How are we going to clean it up? If you remember when I read parts of Plastic Ahoy and talked about Miriam's rafting community, there are a lot of creatures living on the plastic now. So if we just scoop it out of the ocean, what happens to all of those creatures? I don't know. Another issue that surrounds this whole problem is the weather in the ocean. it can be extremely severe sometimes in the open ocean. So will a device that we put out there survive, just the natural weather? So watch Boy and Slat. I just saw an article about him circulating on Facebook, and I think it was through the Huffington Post. Boyanslat. I think he's our best hope at this point.
Lots of people who have thought about that, ways to clean it up, but he seems to be one of the ones that has really putting forward a plan. And from our perspective, it's great because we at Earth Echo really focus on what youth can do. And a lot of people say, oh, well, if you go to school for science or go to school for engineering, then you'll be able to come up with these great ideas. But it's never too early to start, and it's never too early to get involved. And I think that he's one of those great examples that you can take those crazy ideas and give it a whirl, and you might just come up with something great. And also you can always get involved, like you said, refusing, reducing, reusing, and recycling. Those are really, you're right, the 4 R's now of plastic is a really great way to make it in. Oh, and rethink. That's right, 5 R's. So it really is the way that students everywhere can have an impact. So I think that's probably it for the day, unless we have any last minute questions coming in. I can check our Twitter feed as well.
What I'd like, if students in the audience do decide to work on a project, please let me know how it's going. My email address is on my website, patriciamnewman.com, and I'm very available. So I'd love to hear what you're doing and how you're helping the ocean. I think these kinds of projects are absolutely wonderful and inspiring. And like I said, they're the kinds of things it takes a lot of us banding together to finally make a difference. It's kind of like a grassroots organization, if you will, but from an ocean perspective, it's a group of us making waves, if you will, for an ocean analogy. But we are the ones that need to tell the manufacturers, stop making plastic. We're not going to buy it. And we want some alternatives. We want some good alternatives.
Follow-up email that we send out on Tuesday, we're going to be sending out an email with some resources and hopefully a link to the recording of this. We are going to be including a link to our action guide, which is called Clean Up, and it's an action guide for instituting a beach or a river cleanup in your own community. So something that everyone can really get out and take advantage of and help take care of some of the waste that's already there that other people have created. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all day today. We loved having you, and thank you so much.
Enjoy your long weekend.
Thank you so much, Patricia.